What's going on, guys? It's Mike for Sim Racing 604, and 6 months after the public release of Project Cars 3, 200 or less people are playing it daily on Steam. For reference, that's about 20% of the players that are playing Project Cars 2. So why, when this game should be building a devoted fan base and enjoying the hype surrounding DLC releases, is PC3 doing so poorly? We can start off with a brief review of Project Cars 3, especially as it relates to what's improved and what is not improved versus PC2. Graphically, it looks a bit worse, but still overall quite nice. A lot of sounds improved from PC2, but I'd still rank it mid-pack at best amongst the sims I play most. And this isn't a commonly held sentiment, but I think they made improvements in the handling and force feedback versus number 2. I had quite a lot of fun filming the B-roll for this video. And content stayed strong, with much of the original car and track roster being carried over, and some very interesting new cars, some that can only officially be found in this title. Multiplayer isn't really worth discussing since it never really got popular enough to be good or bad, and then the single player and career mode, which in my opinion is awful, and it answers the question in the title of this video. So there's a vast amount of bugs that could be brought up, but let's linger here on the single player and career experience because in my opinion this is really the crux of why things went so poorly for this title. Prior to release, Slightly Mad Studios announced that Stops and Tireware would not be a part of your PC3 experience. I was disliked into oblivion for sharing this opinion previously, but I actually understood where they were coming from on this. I was primarily intending to use this title as a hot lapping sim, so if the tires and fuel were taken care of for me, honestly I wouldn't miss it. Granted, this moves the title sharply away from the simulation category and obviously takes away a large element of how many people enjoy a sim, with carefully measured fuel, tires providing lots of grip for a long time thanks to a great setup, and well-managed pit stops. But for me, I saw a title that was straddling the fence between game and sim and thought that it just might work as a hot lapping simulator, but again, it was one of my most disliked videos ever, so I don't think many people looked at it the same way. But getting back to the single player, the hot lap and sprint race theme of the game, with no pit stops, puts the onus squarely on having great races over a few laps. And they missed the mark, starting way back in a large field of cars and having to knock off other cars in the race just to get into a podium position is the name of the game here. Forget about racing clean. As someone who logged hundreds of hours into the original Gran Turismo, this brought back memories. The AI often goes 2 or 3 wide into corners, which in most titles would be a cool feature, but in PC3 that just means there's no way to get ahead cleanly, so you just sort of have to wait for a clearing and try and blast your upgraded car through a gap, and once you've repeated this 10 or 20 times and captured the lead, the AI falls 10 seconds back per lap. So you're not racing per se, you're driving a slalom course with cars instead of cones. So you bonk and weave your way to the front of the field, you collect rewards for finishing higher, and then you get better cars and upgrades. Again, Gran Turismo 1. And those upgrades somehow feel lame. If you've ever invested huge amounts of time into a racing game, you know that great feeling when you finally achieve an upgrade or make it to the next class or unlock your dream car. But that's not present here in Project Cars 3. It just kind of feels flat. So all in all, the single player mode is a big disappointment. And with the move away from sim elements like pit stops, the single player sprint races have to carry this game, and they don't. So is this title doomed in my opinion? Will it just slowly slide into obscurity if it's not there already? Yes and no. No, because it doesn't have to. This title is not irreparable in my opinion. A good hard look at the single player experience by the SMS team and some serious redesign of the structure of offline racing could salvage this game. Will it ever become a relevant contender as a racing game or racing sim? I don't think it will, but for the thousands of people that already own the title and have deleted it from their drive, it's the least SMS could try to do to regain some respect from those who chose to spend their hard-earned money on this title. So no, it doesn't have to be doomed, but yes, it might very well be doomed based on what I'm seeing on social media from the development team. I studied enough business in college to know better than to expect Slightly Mad to go on Twitter and say, yeah, we goofed, sorry about that. I get it. From a marketing and branding perspective, especially with the recent shakeups in ownership, they need to put on a brave face and stand behind their product. However, this is also the social media age where users and supporters expect developers to address crowdsourced bugs. I say address rather than fix because it's not always possible, but acknowledgement is key. Kunos knows that the VR in ACC is very resource heavy, and they've discussed reasons for this and their limitations on fixing it, and many of us have been critical of R-Factor 2 in the past because of the poor user interface, and Studio 397 has rolled out a new UI over time. Like Kunos, Studio 397 is limited in what they can do, but they did address it. A look at the official Project Cars Twitter shows little to no acknowledgement of what the game is being heavily criticized for. Once again, I'm not expecting a public apology, just ongoing statements about improvements to the effect of many users aren't able to enjoy our great title because of frustrations relating to the single-player experience. We're working on fixes over the next 3 to 6 months that should give users a greatly improved experience. But until we get to that point, until we start hearing that from Slightly Mad, I fear that they simply want to move on and leave a reparable title in disrepair. The like to dislike ratio on the videos of their official YouTube channel shows an unusual amount of dislikes compared to any other official sim racing developers channel, so obviously Slightly Mad must know that they're getting hate from the community. It just doesn't seem to faze them. So to close things here, guys, I was more optimistic than most people about this title prior to release. 6 months later and it barely gets launched on my PC. I give Slightly Mad credit for their improvements in some areas versus the previous title, but so much of the success of PC3 hinges on the single player experience, which is broken. Not broken beyond repair in my opinion, but broken just the same. So will Slightly Mad come through and give this title a much needed facelift, or will they pull up stakes and focus on Project Cars 4? It's beginning to look more and more like the latter is the only scenario that's going to play out. Shame. Let me know in the comments where you think this title went wrong and whether you think it can be saved, and thanks for watching.